Hey YouTube, GmanIV. A video response to GmanIV about the financial news. So I guess we'll title this Financial News. Watched your video. Seems that we're reading some of the same news. How do I respond? Well, I'll give you my response. It is my opinion, my analysis, my take, my viewpoints. I can't substantiate most of it, but I will give you the reasonings why. My view, and I think somebody even posted on your video that the insiders are saying that the collapse of the dollar is imminent within about the next 180 days. I forget what he posted, but that seems consistent with the hints and allegations that I've been getting. I think they've known about this for many years. I think 6 or 8 years ago, somebody did some number crunching and figured out that mathematically there was this was a no-win situation. I think they charted it out and they figured out what the time scale was going to be, and as it got closer and closer they refined it, and I think that it's coming. So the cyber attacks, let's start there. Point one. Either the Israelis or the U.S. or a combination of the two were able to cyber attack Iran's nuclear facility. Now, if they were able to get into a nuclear facility, they're pretty slick enough to most likely get into the banking system. Well, this is where it gets a little interesting. I know all about the inside of the banking systems. JP Morgan, Chase Manhattan Bank, you name it. I can tell you exactly what are on those data center floors because I've worked on them. And I'm really not going to talk about them. What they do inside those banks and in those data centers, I believe, should be kept private. I can tell you, having walked those floors and been somebody who actually pulled data out of the 9/11 blast site, bet you didn't see that one coming. Those systems are tight. I personally worked on equipment that was doing trillions of dollars a night. We called it the money box. And nobody wanted to backfill me playing with that box. And it was actually a collection of boxes spread out over many places. But when you're standing in front of a box that's sitting there blinking lights, and you know that it's processing something like $14 trillion a night, it feels like this. If I make a mistake, I can put my laptop and my badges down and walk away because I've lost my job. Simple as that. The systems are no joke. There's more involved in the back end. Sitting down and saying, well, we're blocking the Bank of America's primary website that all the Yahoos go to, it's not the same as getting into their financial systems and things like that. Could it be done? Maybe. I mean, if you had some inside people, you spent, 6 months to a couple of years kind of putting things into position in order to gain access and get past certain things. And, if you started doing and you made this much of a concerted effort, you might. But let's just say that with the cameras, the security guards, and the security aspects involved, you would not get away with it without them finding out who did it. You don't play with money and have Mickey Mouse systems. So I'm kind of mixed, because the fact that they got into a nuclear facility, it starts to make me wonder. But I think it's a moot point. I understand where you're concerned, but knowing the systems that I know and having seen what they do, I think that's like a 10-foot view. And I back up to a 10,000-foot view, and here's what I see. What I see and what I think is that several years ago they figured out that the dollar's going to collapse. I can't substantiate that, but I'm a person that strongly believes in, I can sit here and tell you anything I want to tell you. But backing it up with actions is where you find out the truth. So you can tell me you're a Navy SEAL, but until you can take a 280 man and reduce him to a crying baby in under 1 second, I'm not going to really buy into your bullshit, if you know what I mean. So what have they done? Well, like you mentioned, they're buying a bunch of ammo. They're buying armored bulletproof checkpoints for whatever reason. They're enhancing homeland security. They keep, for years they've been telling you, we have to become a military state because the terrorists. Well, you have to study history. The U.S. learned some very interesting lessons back in Vietnam. They were taking a $50 million aircraft and bombing a guy on a $2 bicycle. And you wonder why we struggled in the war. And we had what's that guy's name? McIntyre? No. McNeely? No. Oh, Jesus Christ. We had a politician telling our military which political targets they were allowed to attack, i.e. you could not attack anything in North Vietnam. Well, then how in the fuck are we supposed to win the war? And the Vietnamese realized that the will of the people would really put the screws to the U.S., and it did. There was no political will, and so we had a big problem. We didn't win. It was a tie, and I don't even know if it's a tie. And the other thing we learned was the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag. So we study history. So now, where am I going with this? Well, the political targeting thing was such a big lesson that when we went into Iraq, the general pretty much said, you give me what I want, the way I want it, and you give me my free hand, and I will go in and stomp the shit out of them. We went in and stomped the shit out of them. Political will. The machinery that these power boys play laid the groundwork for, what, a year and a half before they went in? And you heard all kinds of stories about, oh, he's got weapons of mass destruction and blah, blah, blah. And they just sat down and constantly kept putting ideas in the public's mind to fan the fire. Well, he didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. So why? Petrodollar. They were looking at getting off the dollar for selling oil, and that's the whole reason we went into Iraq. Everything else was just complete bullshit. And that's the key thing I want you to understand. It was bullshit. They were going in to put that back on the dollar standard because the petrodollar, the standard in which oil is traded, is the only thing that's holding our dollar up. If you doubt me, why do you think in the last 8 years we've walked through the Middle East, we've got 700 bases there, and we're just systematically taking out every oil-producing place, which, by the way, every one of them tried to get off the dollar standard, and every one of them got their asses kicked and got put back on the dollar standard. Gaddafi was our boy, bought and paid for it. But when he thought that little dinar trick was going to fly with us, well, you saw his dead body being driven around in the back of a van. So it's the petrodollar. Everything else you've been told is bullshit. So my analysis is that within the 6 months, I'm going to call it 6 months. I think it's shorter than that from the things that I've heard. Within the next 6 months, the dollar is just going to toilet. And then what happens is going to be a nightmare. I think that this cyber tech bullshit is just that. It's bullshit. I think it is a preconceived idea to start setting the stage that something might happen in the financial systems, and it's going to be something that they can blame on somebody else. It's going to have nothing to do with somebody else. They might do it themselves. It's the cover story for the collapse of the dollar. I have heard that a few weeks ago, bankers were pulled in and told by the Fed, this is no longer a bank issue, this is a national issue, and everything is about to change, and you either play ball or leave. If you stay, you play by a completely different set of rules. It has nothing to do with bank rules, and if you speak about it, it's a federal offense, and you'll go away forever. So there is absolutely something going on. As you pointed out, George Soros has completely unhooked himself from anything related to the financial markets. He has also invested heavily in gold. You mentioned Lucent Technologies. They may be involved in the cyber whatever, but Lucent Technologies is a communications technology company. Back in the day, one thing, most people would look at a Brinks truck. Well, and back in the day, we used to see those Lucent trucks and go, man, that's the truck you want to hit, because the high-end comms gear that's in there is just priceless. They make really good. They're the people that build the backbone of the internet. I mean, that's what they do. So they have hardware and capabilities that can do some very special things. I mean, when you build it, you know it. So Lucent Technologies might just be a very good side investment to get out of that financial market. Well, I honestly think we got about 3 months left, because Congress doesn't bother, even though it's against the law, to come up with a budget. And they haven't for the last 3 years. And instead of balancing the budget or coming up with a budget for this year, they just walked away. What's interesting is that Congress, for the first time in decades, has left D.C. very early. That's a troubling sign. They have bailed out. Well, it's for the elections. Well, it may be and it may not be. They're printing money like it's going out of style, so they're not worried about inflation. Why? Because they think the dollar's going to crash. The insiders are moving their money accordingly, because they have heard from the inside what's coming, and they're now sheltering themselves. I think the big boys are moving their money. They're sheltering themselves and pre-positioning themselves. And the dollar's going to collapse. Now, this is where it gets very difficult to understand. Are they collapsing the dollar to get out of the debt from the Chinese? Are they doing it for some other reason? Is this the intro to the New World Order? Because of the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar completely craps out. We're going to, if Spain, Greece, and the EU is just all having struggling issues now, they'll topple completely. And this seems to fit with the creation of the new one world currency. I've heard from an Amish man, of all people, that has told me that he has heard a rumor, meaning he's not going to tell me who told him, but that the New World Order currency has already been arriving at the banks. It's actually been printed. The fact that an Amish guy with no internet connections and no technological advantage of information provided this little gem just blew my mind. Rumors, hints, allegations. But then you look at George Soros, and you look at Congress, and you look at some of the things that have been done, and those actions seem to validate this discussion. Do I believe it? I would not say that I would get a little nutty. I mean, it's just currency, right? But I would certainly think that you might want to hedge your bets and maybe protect some of your financial interests. Having something that is tangible currency, something that holds its value, might be a good idea. Having a little something just in case the bank shut down. Now, let's say, for the sake of discussion, it's coming. Questions. This is where it gets a little crazy. If I only have $2,000 and the dollar crashes, I'm only out $2,000. If I'm Bill Gates and I have $50 billion and the dollar crashes, I'm going to be very, very pissed off. Same with George Soros. Second question. If you have $10 billion and you get out of the financial markets, so you're not invested in the banks, let's say you go and invest in, say, Lucent Technologies. Okay. Well, the U.S. dollar craps out. The euro follows right behind. Spain goes into pure chaos. Greece gets wiped off the map. God only knows what the hell happens. The first thing that's going to happen is the market is going to straighten out. And then they're going to close the markets because it's going to nosedive so damn hard that they won't even open the markets. So what happens to Lucent? What happens to your investments in all those other businesses? How does it shelter it? What happens to your billions? Point two. If the dollar crashes, the banks will immediately be turned off. All online, all bank doors, everything. The market's going to crash, the banks are going to close. Well, that's going to cause a panic. Now all of a sudden that $1.4 billion in bullets or 1.4 billion bullets or whatever it is the militarizing of the police, and everything starts to make sense. It gets worse, though. The EBT cards. If you have 47% of the nation on EBT cards, well, they don't have anything in reserve. These people do not have any spare cash to tide them over. They're on EBT cards. That means they're not sitting on a couple weeks worth of food and drinks and everything. They don't have a reserve at all. That's 47% of this country does not have a reserve. That card does not get refilled. Suddenly, you got 47% of the people in this nation that literally will instantly go apeshit. They don't have enough bullets. They don't have enough military and police. There's 320 million people in the continental United States. If you just call it 150 million on EBT cards, and those cards stop, there's only 2 million people in the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. 2 million versus 150 million. Do you honestly think your 3 local cops in your little town are up to the task of the 12,000 that are going to go absolutely apeshit? Good luck. Good luck. I don't care if you got an armored vehicle and a 50 cal automatic. You're going to run out of bullets, and when you do, the rest are going to descend. You put enough people on an armored vehicle, they're going to fuck some shit up. And then when they get a hold of the asshole inside that just killed about 700 people, God help him. And then there's no police in that town. And then they turn around and they're hungry. My guess is every Walmart is going to get completely decimated in the first week. Every store, every grocery store, everything. And then it gets bad. I don't even know if these will be worth anything. I know what will be. I'll bet you that this value will go to the point where I could trade this for a truck. And they'll do it. So, cyber attacks. What do I think? I think that it's propaganda bullshit that is being put out there to pre-stage the American people that something might happen to the banks. Much like the long, slow build-up. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. No, it's the petrodollar, you lying bastards. You're not going to let it happen. You're going to go in there and fucking kick their ass for it, and you're going to dream up some bullshit, and they dreamed it up. And then when Iraq 2 came up, they did it again. And now it's Iran. It's funny. If you just change the Q to an N, the playbook has not changed at all. They're not even creative enough to bother. But the money men are moving their money. The hints and allegations are coming out. Inflation is running crazy, and I don't know if you all have been to the grocery store or not, but Jesus Christ, it's getting very expensive to live. So what happens? What goes first? What's the sequence of the events? What happens to your mortgage? And this is the question that I keep asking. If the collapse comes and the dollar is worth nothing, if I have $1 and it's worthless, and I have a $10 bill and it's worthless, and I have a $20 bill and it's worthless, what are you going to pay me to go to work? What are you going to pay a police officer to go to work? What are you going to pay the guy that works at the sewage treatment plant to go to work? How do you get anybody to go to work? You can't pay them. How do you pay your bills? Your money's worthless. What happens to your mortgage? Oh, by the way, the U.S. postal system is $5 billion in debt and is probably going to just totally crumple. How do you pay your mortgage when the mailman doesn't run? If there's a cyber attack on the banks and online banking doesn't work, how are you going to make your payments? Ergo, will everybody default on their mortgages? Will the banks own 85% of the property in the continental United States suddenly? Big scale. Remember, when you watch the propaganda of the news, realize that this is what they want you to hear. Ergo, it has nothing to do with what is really going on. The question is, what are they preparing you for? Would be my answer. I think they are preparing us for the economic collapse. I think they have dreamed up this psychosemantic bullshit to start setting the mindset, and everything they do is slow and gradual, but I think it's coming. I think that they've prepared. I think they've spent their money on ammunition and militarizing the police and beefing up all the system, everything. The only caveat is if the dollar collapses, how are they going to pay all those DSH operatives, and how are they going to pay the SWAT teams, and how are they going to pay the military, and how are they going to pay anybody to do anything with worthless currency? What happens if the banks do close? And what happens to mortgages and food stores and Walmarts and everything? I don't know, but I would not be so upset about the cyber attack thing. I think it's complete. I think it's false flag bullshit, all staged, and has nothing to do with reality. If the government really wanted to protect the banks, you're damn skippy they would. But something's coming. There's your response, G-Man. Hope you liked it.